Yo, good day, gents, and welcome to another episode of Father's Fire. My name's Jody Sedrick, and every week we get together to explore the joys, the challenges, the triumphs, the sorrows, and yes, the fun of being a dad. And as I've thought about what I might share with you guys this week, I actually, as very typical, flipped through a number of stations, accounts that I follow. I follow Involved Dad. I follow Father's Heart podcast. I follow Shawnee the Kid. And I saw a great post by Involved Dad today that really got me thinking. And I thought that I would explore with you guys today. And the question that Involved Dad posted was, what do your children need you to be in this moment? And I think a lot of times we as dads, we think of ourselves as provider, the worker, the fixer. But from your kids' perspective, what do they need you to be today? And I've thought a lot about that, and I've kind of looked backwards at the past year, even longer, about the interactions that I've had with my kids. And so I thought that there were maybe a couple things that maybe you haven't thought about that I hadn't really thought about, but as I look back, I could see that at that moment, my kid or kids needed something in me more than just being a provider. So you guys know me, Judy and I are a big seventh man. So at the moment, when our kids were doing cross country, they were doing basketball, they were doing volleyball, a myriad of different sporting activities, even going to band concerts and going to jazz concerts and presentations. Our kids at that moment needed us to be their biggest cheering section. And Judy and I have that down really well. We're really good at being our kids' biggest fan, their biggest cheering section. But I think sometimes we miss other opportunities. Sometimes our kids need us to be a sounding board, especially as my kids have gotten older. They've moved on. They've moved to San Diego and Los Angeles. And my second son came to me and said, "Hey, Dad, I'm thinking about taking this kind of adventure trip to Colombia. What do you think?" And of course, the first thing that you think about with Colombia is there's a lot of cartels down there. Do you really want to go and just walk about and explore and experience the country and the culture? Is that a place you want to go? And what my son needed was a sounding board. It's like, is this a good idea? What do you think? This is where I could stay. This is how I could travel. I could do it very affordably if I stay at hostels, and I'd also have the flexibility of moving between city to city so that I could see the entire country. And to be a sounding board was really valuable for my son at that moment. And I think back with my own interaction with my dad, and sometimes, I would call my dad and I'd say, "Hey, Dad, I'm really wrestling with this challenge in our life, either with employment or with our kids or going through the adoption process." And sometimes I just needed to talk to my dad and get his feedback, but also get his understanding, to get his insight, to get his experience, to get his wisdom. So sometimes your kids need you to be a sounding board. And I think a lot of times when we're in that role of sounding board, we make the mistake of trying to solve the problem, of just spitting out solutions, vomiting out solutions, when your kids really just need you to listen and help them work through things that they're already thinking about. The other thing is, your kids need you to be a believer in them. My oldest son, Devin, he's very creative, right? He's an actor, he's a model, he's a musician, he's a performer. And I always told him when he was younger, as he was sharing his big dreams, and as Cynthia was sharing her dreams of being a model and being an actress, and Kaylani was sharing me her dreams of being a D1 athlete, I often said, "Look, that is an awesome dream. Why not you? Why not you? Other people have done it. So why not you? What separates you from them? If they can do it, why can't you? And so I tried to create an environment where they knew that I believed in them. I believed in their dream. I believed that if they put in the work, that they could achieve that aspiration that they were working towards. And I think that is important. A lot of times, our kids, I wonder if your kids feel like you believe in them, that you believe in their capacity to make a choice. A lot of families really struggle with the dynamic of allowing their kids to make decisions, to experience things, because they're trying to protect them. And I get them. I get that. But your kids also have to have the freedom to move, to experience, to question, to experiment, and have the confidence that you're going to allow them to move through that experience, because they need you to not only be a believer of them, but also being a truster of them and who they can become. Another thing that I thought about is sometimes maybe your kid needs you to be an advocate for them. I think back a couple of weeks ago, my good friend Sean Hart, who runs Involved Dad, he's like, you know what? I have to go to school because there was an instance at school with my daughter and some other kids. And so he went there after hearing her side of the story. He went there as an advocate for his daughter. And as he collected additional information about what happened, not only did he have his daughter's perspective, but he also had the teacher's perspective and the stories from other kids. He still remained her advocate, but he also was able to step back and go, you know what? Let's look at what happened. And are there things that you could have done differently to diminish the impact of this situation? So not only did he move in as the advocate and in some respects a protector of his daughter, he also had the wisdom to go, all right, what are things that you can do in the future to diminish the opportunity for this type of situation to happen again? And I love that model because I think a lot of times we aren't true advocates for our kids. And sometimes maybe we go to their defense without really having all of the facts, and we charge in and we like bulldoze over the situation when we don't have all the facts. And our kids feel like, oh, dad's just going to take over, instead of really thinking through the situation, analyzing the situation, and helping the kids move through the situation, not only to solve it today, but also to give them the tools to solve it in the future. I think too, sometimes your kids maybe need you to be a confidant. They may come to you with a heavy problem that they're wrestling with, and they're not quite sure if they want it to be made known to other people, even the siblings in the house. Maybe they're wrestling with something that they're not ready for other people to know about. And you need to be able to have the discernment and the wisdom on knowing when to go, you know what? I'm going to hold your trust. I'm going to be your confidant. I'm going to hold your secret, the thing that you're working through right now. And when the time is ready, and as you've put all the pieces together, I will have the confidence in you to move forward. And that's a delicate balance of allowing your kids the space to trust you, to have confidence that you will not only trust their situation, but trust their heart. And sometimes your kids need you to be a confidant, somebody that they can trust their deepest emotions, their deepest concerns, their deepest fears, their deepest aspirations. And maybe they're not quite ready to shine the light on those to everybody else. So recognizing that sometimes it's okay to step back and allow yourself to fulfill the role of being a confidant at that moment. You also need to, especially when your kids are younger, but I found that it's still going on as my kids are older, is you still may need to be a playmate for your kids. And I think a lot of you men, especially if your kids are younger, you're in the middle of building a business or you're working, you come home and you're tired. And what's your little guy, your little girl want to do? They want to spend time with you. They want to play with you. They want to draw with you. They want to play charades or play video games or go out in the backyard and throw a ball. A lot of times we kind of push them aside and go, oh, you know what? I'm a little tired. And we miss the opportunity to play with our kids. Sometimes our kids just need you to play. I mean, my kids still, my third son, Zane, and my oldest son, Devin, live in LA, and one lives in San Diego. And sometimes they give me a shout and say, hey, Dad, surf's looking pretty good in the next couple of weeks. Do you want to come out on a weekend? And so we have time to play. And, sometimes we go snow skiing or we go water skiing or we go wake surfing, or on Sundays, it is game night. And a lot of times we're playing Skull King or, Crazy Eights or numbers, or, a myriad, four on a couch. And making time to play with your kids. Sometimes they don't need you to just be dad. They need you to be play dad. And they need you to play with the mom as well, right? They need to see that you're interacting with the family as a whole. And sometimes your kids just need you to be fun. Sometimes they need you to be serious. And recognizing when you need to move between being fun and serious. I think a lot of times we kind of make our kids feel small because we're not taking the concern of their heart seriously. We're diminishing it. We're pushing aside. We say things like, oh, it's not that hard. Well, you know what? It's not that hard because you've already learned how to move through it. And it may be, and probably is, the first time they've moved through that experience. And so it is hard for them because they've never faced it. They've never confronted that experience. And so that's where being their advocate, to be their guide, to be their counselor, to be their friend, to be their biggest fan, to be their biggest cheerleader, all those things can come into play. But learning what your kid needs at the moment is a real art. Because a lot of times we rush in to solve the problem, we rush in to fix it, when sometimes our kids just need us to listen. The other thing that I think your kids need, and they may need now, and they probably need their entire life, but they need to see a blueprint in you. You need to be a blueprint of what a father is. You need to be a blueprint of what a loving husband is. And some of you are still trying to figure that out. And that's okay too, because your kids can see, hey, you know what? Dad was here and he became this because he wanted to change an aspect of his life. And so now they see the blueprint of how you move from one characteristic to another characteristic. And I think sometimes we don't want to share our own failings. And I've been guilty of that. I don't want my kids to know that I tripped up, but maybe your kids need to know that you struggled early in your marriage, or you struggled with addiction, or you struggled in this aspect of your life, or they saw you build a business, or they saw you kick a habit, right? They saw you quit smoking or drinking or whatever, right? Kids seeing your transition, seeing your evolution, seeing your growth is a blueprint that could help them through their own growth. I mean, I shared with you guys a couple weeks ago how my dad, when he retired from the Navy, at 44 years of age wanted to go be a nurse. And we had a family council about what kind of impact that was going to have on our family for the next 2 years. And I saw in my dad a pattern of, you know what, I have a dream. It's going to impact the family. I need to counsel with my family and talk about how that's going to impact them. And then along the journey, check in with us. How are we doing? I remember very distinctly, my dad had an exam coming up, a big paper that he had to do. And he's like, you know what? I see that we need some family time. And so I'm going to go and dedicate an hour or two with you guys. And then when I get back, I got to hit the books. Right. So I saw a pattern of my dad going for a dream, but also making time for us and sacrificing, but also going, you know what, right now I really need to do this. And so I saw this pattern that I could emulate and that I've looked up to and go, wow, my dad could do it. I can do it. So what does your kid need today? Maybe you're in a divorced home situation. Does your kid need to just go for a drive and sit with you side by side? Or does he need you to play? Does he need you to go do something fun because you've been working too much? You haven't had any time together. Does your kid need you to be a little bit more understanding? Now, a lot of our kids are facing some big challenges about their identity, who they are, who they love, the things that they're taught outside of your home, and they're wrestling with that. Do they need you to be a sounding board? Do they need you to be understanding? Do they need you to give words of encouragement and love? Do they need you to be a little bit more loving? Do you need to come up to your kid and put your arm around them and say, you know what? I haven't told you in a while, but I love you and I'm proud of you. What does your kid need at this moment? Every single one of you listening today just thought of every single one of your kids. And you had a thought, you had an inspiration of what your kid needs at this moment. I invite you to go do it this week. You might be, and I'm pretty sure you'll be very amazed at what will happen with you and your kid if you make the time to really think about what they need at this moment. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I'd love to hear your comments. How are you determining what you need to be at this moment with your kids, or how have you determined what you need to be in the past? I would love to hear that because it's so critical, right? Because life is dynamic. Families are dynamic. You know, you lose your jobs, you get sick, you have divorce, you have, kids, struggling with, challenges that are so big that it affects the entire family. Families are dynamic and your kids need different things from you. And the question is can you move in and out of those roles as your kids need you? And sometimes you may not have all of the answers. And sometimes you're trying to figure out how to solve the problem yourself, and your kids are looking to you for strength. And sometimes you get to be the strength while trying to find the strength, while praying for the strength, while trying to build the strength within yourself. But if you really honestly look at what your kids need and ask the question, what do they need me to be today? Just might unlock the door to a little bit more understanding, connection, and love between you and your kid. Thank you guys so much for joining me. And as always, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And We will check you same time, same bad channel, right here on Father's Fire. See ya!